Welcome back to Phoenix Talkback. Phoenix Talkback is the world's first Jewish and Chicano radio show. This is Lou, and I'm here with my co-host Viva. How are you, Viva?
Buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. How are you today, Lou?
I'm fine, Viva. Thank you. Last Thursday saw the end of the recall effort against Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio. There was a press conference held on the 30th of May, and it was the last official day of the recall. Lilia Alvarez announced that all of the petitions had been shredded, destroyed. And when asked how many signatures there were, her answer was, it's irrelevant. Randy Parraz, president of the Citizens for a Better Arizona, blamed the failed recall on the lack of donors, the lack of volunteers, the lack of buy-in by other elected officials, and the lack of courage to stand up to Sheriff Arpaio. But after literally thousands of dollars and thousands of man-hours, what are the results? Why isn't Joe Arpaio recalled yet? And who really benefited by this recall effort? Who collected money? Did any of the donors or the volunteers make bank, or did they end up with nothing? Phoenix Talkback will now dedicate a series of programs to evaluate what this failed recall means and what it could lead to. And we do this as a search for transparency and accountability. With this in mind, we dedicate this series of programs to all the hard workers of the recall and to all the activists, voters, dreamers, and others in Maricopa County who believe that ethics do matter.
Thank you, Lou. You know what? My first reaction to this, I did hear about the recall. By the way, I am alive in Arizona. Of course, I heard about it. My first reaction really at this point is, you know what? Somebody stop this recall because I want to get off, right? Because this has been going on for, how long has it been going on, Lou? Years. We went through an election cycle during the recall rhetoric, during this so-called movement to get rid of Sheriff Joe. He actually started from scratch, ran an election, and beat the hell out of all the candidates that even opposed him, and had no opposition, had no threat whatsoever of actually not being reelected. So where I'm coming from as a Chicano, as a community member, my reaction is going to be a little more introspective, and I'm asking myself, I'm asking us to ask ourselves: is it what is going on in our community there that we can be taken on this ride, like this prolonged, extended fantasy about recalling America's toughest sheriff? And what you just reported here, the reporter Randy saying that it was because there wasn't buy-in, there wasn't help. Well, you know what? That's a message. He's right. There wasn't buy-in. There wasn't help. You know why? Because the community has said over and over again, the majority of the voters, the people who come out and vote, have said over and over again, they like the job that Sheriff Joe is doing. And for some reason, what concerns me is because what he is doing to my people, to my community, to brown people, to people who look like me, isn't enough to inspire the outrage from these voters to get him out. So I'm not concerned about the officials, the elected officials, Sheriff Joe himself. I'm concerned about all the people who aren't moved at the fact that they're loading up Mexicans by the busload, stopping them at street lights, putting them into prisons, and turning them into some kind of persecuted second-class citizenry. These voters are not moved enough by those actions to change their vote for sheriff. That is the community that my children are going to grow up in. That's the community I'm going to walk out on the streets in every day. That's what scares me to death. Now, what kind of state are we in about the recall that we extended this movement for so long when we knew, and Randy's a professional, the people who ran this recall, they're all professionals. They know just as well as I do that there is no chance of recalling Sheriff Joe in a vote, yet they took us through this again for another year.
And now Maricopa County, Arizona has recall fever. I mean, when does it stop? When does it stop? What?
According to the statements made on that day, it's not going to stop. They are intending, they said, didn't Lilia say, that it doesn't stop here? We will continue. Continue what is the question?
Right.
Continue what? What have we accomplished so far?
Well, Randy Parraz did not take entire responsibility for this failed recall. Okay, I know that a lot of people are responsible to actually get involved, but I didn't hear him issue any I statements. It's everybody else who's to blame. It's the lack of donors, it's the lack of volunteers, it's the lack of buy-in, and it's the lack of courage. Right now, I'd like to play an audio clip of Randy Parraz at the Los Abigados debate of the sheriff's candidates last year. Joe Arpaio did not show up, but on the DS was John Rowan, Mike Stauffer, and Paul Penzone. And this is Randy Parraz posing a question to the three candidates. Or really, it's much less of a question and more like a lecture. So let's take a listen to this.
We have about 10 minutes left. Let's go with Randy.
Thank you. Randy Parraz, President of Citizens for a Better Arizona. And this gentleman over here was talking about how invincible Sheriff Arpaio. I was having a flashback because that's what this is saying about Russell Pearce. Right? He was so powerful, no one could ever take him on. He was president of the Senate. And look what happened when people came together and had a strategy to actually win. You all need to get specific in terms of transparency. How much money have you raised in your campaign today? How much other work activities out there is helping your campaign win? What do the numbers look like? You got people here who don't walk in the court unprepared. They walk in really knowing what it's going to take. You may have the best plan once you get elected, but right now it's like, how are you going to offset that? What type of money's out there? What's the plan look like? And how many votes you need to move to really make this thing happen? And then who are the 3 or 4 top endorsements you have that really, from the community, who have elected officials, say, you know what, I'm going to stand behind this person because they have the best chance tonight. Because bottom line for us is about how do we move things forward. Me personally, this is very personal for me. I was one of those folks who was targeted by Sheriff Arpaio back in 2008, arrested for speaking out against him. We were in this fight before you all decided to run. I want to commend you all for running. I think it makes a tremendous amount of courage to step in this type of climate. And I agree with you all, he is vulnerable. There's going to be a poll release, the most extensive poll recently, where Sheriff Arpaio support's below 50%. So I'm telling you, he is vulnerable, but it's going to take a really smart strategy, and it has a groundswell of people and money and focus and discipline to really make this thing happen. So I hope all of you will say, where you at in terms of the money and votes.
So Randy Parraz asks the 3 sheriff's candidates, he says, if you want me to get specific in terms of transparency, how much money have you raised in your campaign today? How much are other activities helping your campaign win? What do the numbers look like? Do you have people who walk in who are prepared and know what it's going to take? And so now that the recall is over, I'm asking those questions of CBA, of Respect Arizona. How much money did you get in for this recall? And what was your strategy? Because it didn't work. Now, joining us in the studio here today is Gail, the Bohemian Activist. And hello, Gail.
Good morning, Lou.
Hello. Do you feel fleeced?
I feel fleeced. I bought into CBA the day it rolled out, the day Randy stood at the Capitol with the press conference and outlined how we were just outraged at Russell Pearce and the legislation he was trying to pass. He stood there and told us that was a bipartisan organization created to fight this evil. And I stood there and I applauded and I was happy and I bought into the whole rhetoric for a whole year. Then Mike Stauffer jumped into the race against Arpaio, and he was so highly qualified that for me it was an easy choice. I'm an independent thinking Democrat, and Mike Stauffer ran as an independent. He was so highly qualified. I jumped on that bandwagon, and so did the members of CBA. They touted his talent from the beginning until 1 year later, the end of January, when Paul Penzone announced his run for sheriff. All of a sudden, just as quick, he wasn't even out of the gate, and CBA was right on his bandwagon, and Stauffer was yesterday's news.
You'd say that everybody in CBA took the lead from Randy Parraz.
No question about it.
Right.
He and Chad Snow collectively stood there together and talked about their bipartisan effort to remove Russell Pearce from office.
Was this Randy Parraz's attempt to become kingmaker?
No doubt about it.
Right.
I didn't know it at the time, and I didn't know it was going to morph into supporting a candidate for sheriff. I didn't know it was going to be more than recall Pearce, but once he was done recalling Pearce, then he had another effort underway.
Also joining me in the studio is DeeDee Blasé, founder of the Tequila Party and currently the originator of her new political group, Somos Independents. And Somos Independents has members all over the nation. Hello, DeeDee.
Hi, Lou. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you very much. So, DeeDee, are you a Chicano, DeeDee?
I'm a Chicana.
You're a Chicana. Okay, so we've got some people here who represent a variety of political directions and peoples. We're qualified. Tell me, do you feel fleeced?
I don't feel fleeced by the recall Arpaio effort necessarily, but I do want to point out that I signed that recall Arpaio petition. But I did not contribute money like Gail did. Gail has contributed a lot of monies to Randy Parraz and CBA and the recall Russell Pearce. But I do want to point out that it's important to sort of find out recall behavior. Recall behavior is important. I did initiate the very first recall against Russell Pearce, and I remember being criticized by Randy Parraz for lack of money. He criticized me to the media for the lack of money. That sparked empathy from a wealthy individual who pledged to give us a sizable amount of money. And it was when I made the announcement of that $15,000 pledge that I received a call from Randy Parraz because he was interested what I was going to do with that money. So I met myself, Jose Peñalosa, met with Randy Parraz and Chad Snow, and they wanted to know what I was going to do with the money. And I told Randy Parraz I was going to use that money to pay a signature company.
Right.
And he told me, no, you're going to compete with me. And he requested that either we join or one of us, compare signatures, who had the most signatures. And he talked me into withdrawing, and he wanted to know who my source of income, who the guy was that pledged that. And then I said, well, I'll give you the name of the guy if we can continue to fight for immigration reform. And he told me that I couldn't use any of the immigration speak at all if I were to join his effort.
I see a number of contradictions there. He did not like the fact that you plan to use that money, which I guess he was trying to latch onto for a petition company. He also criticized Mike Stauffer for employing a paid petition company. But what did Respect Arizona employ to collect signatures? A paid petition company. So, this is very, very odd. I also remember that Randy Parraz was critical of these sheriff's candidates for the lack of money. Yet Randy Parraz, as head of CBA and basically the father of this recall against Joe Arpaio effort, stressed money, and he wanted more money. And isn't it true that up until even the last couple of days before the end of the recall, he was soliciting money for, this is very odd, he was soliciting money for CBA, not for Respect Arizona, the recall effort. So essentially, whatever money he would get in through CBA would be hidden and not be reflected on Respect Arizona. Now, this is really weird.
Randy Parraz calls CBA a social welfare organization, and they have the option to publish or not publish their campaign finance reports. There's only one report filed by Citizens for a Better Arizona, and that was all the monies and expenses taken in during the Pearce recall. From that point forward, he hides the finances. They are not there for you to see because he has that option under IRS rules. He can do that if he wants to, and that's what he does. And to me, that is a big red flag right there, and against what I would call logical reasoning for donors. I mean, there has to be some kind of industry standard or best practices for donors to find out who and what they're donating to. And he doesn't even provide the most basic information for us to scrutinize.
This is the same kind of complaint that many Democrats now in Washington are having, trying to find out who's behind all these Tea Party groups and who's contributing, and they call themselves social welfare organizations, yet they are very, very political. So I think the comparisons are striking.
Well, Lou, Randy Parraz has criticized candidates for using the petition organization that he used. And more importantly, what I take issue with as a community activist, he puts the blame on the failure of the recall for Arpaio on the lack of donors. That's number one. He's putting blame on the lack of money he received and volunteers. And he's shooting himself in the foot when he is destroying relationships with key community organizers like Angel Garcia, who was escorted and threatened jail. And you can't do that. A recall effort must be supported by the entire community. It shouldn't be about kingmakers. You have to build key relationships. And I don't understand why money is constantly being requested. Instead of creating a mechanism to ask for money donations, offer the community a solution that's free. And it's free to call Congress and support comprehensive legal immigration. You don't need any money for that. This is a federal issue. The end of Arpaio will take place at the federal level.
For some reason, he thought that if we do a recall, that would dislodge Joe Arpaio. But I think he understood the magnitude of this effort.
That's what I'm saying about it. It's blaming money for the loss of the recall is like blaming, the Powerball machine for not kicking out your number, right? The win wasn't there. It wasn't there. They knew it. This isn't their first day on the job. They know the constituency out there. I know the constituency out there. I've been doing voter registration efforts for since 2000, personally knocking on doors. And I know that every other door, whether they're Mexican-American or not, whether they have a Spanish surname on those little lists that they carry around, guess what? Not all of them are against Sheriff Joe. That's the problem. Right? And they think that if we just get every Mexican, every Spanish surname on them lists to sign a petition, that's going to translate into votes. That is just ridiculous because it doesn't happen that way. Our problem is deeper in the community. It has to do with us. There are two ways we can go about this. We have to conduct an autopsy now on this dead recall. So one angle is like what you guys are going through. When a snake oil salesman rolls into town, and you gotta ask yourself, you can either go after the salesman or you can turn to the community and ask them, why do you feel like you need to buy this stuff? Why are you turn to your people and say, why are you vulnerable to these kind of flights of fancy, these kind of fantastical ideas? It's not possible. We have to change the culture in our state, the culture in our community. First thing we have to do is accept the fact that we live in a very anti-Mexican sentiment state. And we need to change those sentiments because people, including Mexican Americans, are supporting Sheriff Joe.
Viva, do you feel like you've been fleeced?
I don't feel personally like I've been fleeced because I didn't buy a ticket to begin with. Right? I didn't think after Sheriff Joe gets when Sheriff Joe gets elected during your recall campaign, to me that was the blaring signal that we probably shouldn't be doing this. You don't launch a recall right after he got elected by a huge margin, right? The people have spoken, and that's really the part that gets me in my gut, because Sheriff Joe comes out on the news all the time and he says exactly that. He says in his very arrogant way and insulting manner that the people elected me and I will do that job. And damn, you know what? That's true. That's disgusting.
Another byproduct of that, attempting to recall too soon after the election, this last election, even though he's an incumbent, because it's going to be argued in court and on June 25th. Another byproduct of this is that the Arizona legislature, which is composed as a majority of Tea Party Republicans, could very well take up legislation to curb or prevent or restrict recalls in the future. And I fear that.
Now, Lou, one of the questions that we have is, where is Randy Parraz's own personal risk? Angel Garcia showed me a report that where Randy Parraz owns 3 homes. Where is his? You know, if he's saying that the failure of this recall has to do with the donors, why not sell one of his homes? Why not put his money where his mouth is?
I agree, if it's so important to you. And isn't it also logical to assume that Randy Parraz will receive consulting fees out of this recall, especially since the volunteers?
I'm glad you brought that up.
We only have a minute.
Okay, I analyzed his one campaign finance report, and I found that Randy does indeed take consulting fees. And I think we have to take this back just a little bit of step. When he was running for the Senate, he did a bio for the Arizona Republic, and one of the questions they asked him, now this was before he's on anybody's radar, what's your occupation? What's your main source of income? And his answer was organizational consultant.
Organizational consultant. I wonder how much that's worth. Well, you know, we are going to be returning to that subject and more. I think we'll get into the shredded petitions coming up right after this break on Phoenix Talkback.
Órale pues.
I'm an elected constitutional sheriff. I'm the poster boy for racial profiling. Type of clothes they're wearing, their speech. We raid businesses. We arrest Latino people. They go directly to jail. That's what this is all about. I do it all the time. Arrest Latino people, send them back to their country. How do you know they don't like me? And that's the way it is. What difference does it make? What difference does it make?
It happened. The recall was a colossal belly flop, and I gave you a caution sign months ago. I know many of you dedicated your time, effort, and money to this disaster, are no doubt feeling fleeced because, hey, you thought you were working for a worthy cause. Every pundit was saying that this recall was poorly timed and had questionable leadership, as well as trying to get an unusually high number of signatures in such a short period of time for a local county election. I'm just a messenger that gave you a caution sign months ago. For Phoenix Talkback, I'm Bobby Hernandez.
Is this your car? Or is this your car? The ASE certified mechanics at A&B Automotive have the expertise to make your car sound like this. You can rely on A&B Automotive to keep you safe on the road. Go see them at 1235 East Dunlap in Phoenix, Arizona, or call them at 602-906-9579. Se habla español. They're also on the web at abautomotiveaz.com. A&B Automotive, 1235 East Dunlap in Phoenix, 602-906-9579. Because you don't want your car to sound like this. You want it to sound like this. A&B Automotive, 602-906-9579. Tell them Phoenix Talkback sent you. Do you have a business or a message you would like to promote? Phoenix Talkback would like to help you. Phoenix Talkback is now available to you to help you tell the world whatever they need to know. When you advertise on Phoenix Talkback, not only will your message be heard on the radio, it will also be heard on the internet for as long as there is an internet, and we think that will be for a very long time. Our creative sound engineers will craft a custom-made, memorable image people will hear about your product or your message. Try us! Try Phoenix Talkback for your advertising needs. Right now, we're new and we're pretty inexpensive. So this is a golden opportunity for you to reach out to the growing number of listeners who are tuning into Phoenix Talkback. Call us at 602-910-4568. That's 602-910-4568 to get with our program and reach all the listeners. They're waiting for you. A&B Automotive is your local auto care center, trusted with your vehicle since 1995. They are your local service center for light trucks, domestic, and foreign vehicles. Their experience ensures that your vehicle is well maintained all year round. It's the small repairs that prevent costly breakdowns, and you can trust A&B Automotive ASE certified expertise in everything from oil changes, tune-ups and brakes, to drivetrain and engine repairs. It's what they do to make your vehicle reliable when you need it most. Go see A&B Automotive at 1235 East Dunlap in Phoenix, Arizona, or call them at 602-906-9579. Se habla español. They're also on the web at abautomotiveaz.com. That's A&B Automotive, 1235 East Dunlap in Phoenix. 602-906-9579. Okay, we're back on Phoenix Talkback, and we're talking about the failed recall of Joe Arpaio. You know, I was kind of shocked to learn that they had shredded the petitions. The reason given was that there was no need for them, as they would not be going to submit them for verification, which would have cost over $1 million. But someone else also speculated that it was important to keep all the names out of the hands of Joe Arpaio because Arpaio is known to go after his enemies. This is kind of dramatic, don't you think so? I mean, Arpaio, at any time, can go down to the elections department and get a list of everyone who voted against him. And the executive board of both CBA and Respect Arizona, they didn't hide themselves. They were out there in front. So Joe Arpaio can easily discover who those people are. But it's the petitions that bother me. I'm going to speculate that they scanned the petitions and kept all the information on those petitions before they destroyed those petitions. And this raises a lot of questions about the shredding and about the information on those petitions and how it could be possibly used in the future.
Well, again, Lou, you know, my reaction, my concern is that this campaign, it became ubiquitous at some point, right? Like, people were like selling their stuff, leaving their houses, taking to the streets, up to the mountaintop, right? Following this dream of recalling Sheriff Joe Arpaio at the promise of salvation, and it never came. And it's not the first time that it happened. So, you know, where I'm reacting to the members of the community, every high school student that I had worked with over the past couple of elections who had become active in the community and who have heart and have their energy and their limited resources to give to try to do something positive, were attracted to this bright light that they presented to the community as if it was a real hope. And I knew that it wasn't. And now I feel like so much resources were drawn from the community to only be let down in this way. And so I really don't want to sit on the side of the community and give the Recall Arpaio effort this little golf clap for, you know, A for effort. Yes, recalling Sheriff Joe is a noble cause. It is. Of course it is. But to have people pretend like losing is winning is not what we're supposed to do. Since when is losing winning? We didn't win. We were never close to recalling Sheriff Joe Arpaio. So let's acknowledge that right now before we get asked to do this again.
And Viva, you bring up such a good point. And as a mother and a grandmother, it bothers me so much that, like, these kids that are on Team Awesome and Adios Arpaio, they work so hard out in the hot. They're the ones out there, boots on the ground, knocking on the doors, sweating, giving it their all. And it bothers me that they've been exploited that way. I think you're absolutely right when you say we need community awareness. We need to come together. And I hope that Team Awesome and Adios Arpaio and all the other kids out there learn that they don't need Randy Parraz to lead them. They have that power within themselves, and they are now prepared to go and do it.
Well, speaking of Team Awesome, I heard something about Team Awesome, and I think this has a direct effect on the DREAM Act. Someone told me, they reminded me that the kids in Team Awesome were characterized as thugs, and this is not doing the DREAM Act any favors. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think. I think they could have been working on a CIR, or they could have been putting this energy towards the DREAM Act specifically all this time. The DREAM Act would have essentially neutralized Sheriff Joe and his behavior. He claims that he's just doing what is the law, and if you change the law, then he will presumably adhere, right? But yet we just go after Sheriff Joe personally to no avail, and it's a waste of our time.
Hello, you're on Phoenix Talkback.
Hey, this is Angel Garcia.
Hello, Angel Garcia!
How's everybody doing? One of the things I want to talk about is kind of expanding on what Viva's saying is the problem isn't community organizing here in Arizona because it's become so much about the money in these quote-unquote nonprofits. People love going after the symptoms and not the cause of the illness. And they use that to filter all this money into their coffers. And we're seeing they're directors. Now, mind you, they're directors, they're presidents, they're whatevers of these organizations. They can't pay themselves that way, so they come up with creative titles like pollster and consultant, and they write themselves bigger checks than we're used to seeing for someone who traditionally does that job. An example is in 2011, Randy took 30% for himself. I bet you if that were any other nonprofit here in the state, people would be up in arms for someone taking 30% of the total cash contributions. But nobody seems to be getting upset at Randy Parraz for doing that.
There was also an event where he grandstanded the acceptance of $40,000 from Democrat John Halberd, who, when he was running for CD3, said he supported SB 1070, and here's Randy Parraz accepting a $40,000 check and a big to-do at an event where you were barred. And eventually, he took that $40,000, CBA donated that money, transferred it right over to Moving Mesa Forward. So,
that is correct.
Well, what do you remember about being unceremoniously?
Well, here's the thing: he dubbed it as a public event, and he didn't say there's any kind of dress code. He didn't say there's any form of behavioral management that needs to occur. This man, who's very well known for going into the Board of Supervisors and raising hell and disrupting important business that affects not just those in the room, but those outside of the room. For example, the family that was supposed to get money. He does that kind of stuff. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not the kind of person who goes in and raises hell. I kind of sit back, I'm quiet, I listen, I observe, and I take in information that way. Well, he didn't want me there, so he came up with multiple excuses. One was I wasn't dressed appropriately, even though there was a lot of people in jeans and a T-shirt. One is that he had heard I threatened people. I go, that's the last thing I do. I'm not one to threaten people. And then the last one that he came up with is, well, I heard that he was going to come and disrupt this, and this was an important ceremony, and blah, blah, blah. So what happened is I had the ticket that was comped for me. I walked in the door, and Mr. Parraz literally came running across the room because he's on the other side of the room. And I'm going to say he unintentionally, you can agree to disagree, but I think he unintentionally nudged me because he was running so fast. He kind of bumped me, and he got up in my face. He started yelling at me, and he threatened me with a notice of trespass. He wanted me arrested, but you have to issue a notice of trespass first. Mm-hmm. So I just said, all right, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to go. And the whole time the officer who had to escort me out, he was just laughing with me because I've worked with him, and he knows I'm not like that.
Yeah, you know what, Angel? That's just ridiculous. All that kind of behavior is just ridiculous. That tells you that people are getting too serious about all this stuff. They're getting serious, like they're protecting it like it's their business or something. And that's
well,
a problem.
It is their business. That's
exactly.
the problem.
Tell me something, Angel. Am I the only one who saw this recall, at least the second one, as a non-starter? You know, what were people saying with the Democrats or with the circles that you were running? What were they saying about this recall and the grand effort that they were proposing?
A lot of the older activists, the more serious activists, the seasoned ones who've done this for a long time, they saw it right off the bat that this was a failure. You didn't show us who your candidate was. You did it right after somebody just got in office. You're telling taxpayers on the other side of the aisle, this is going to cost you millions of dollars. And they stop and they think about that. Why are we going to pay millions of dollars just to put this guy back in office? You know? So the more seasoned activists were like, no. But the younger people that are filled with hope and they hope things will get better, there was a lot of them who fell in line with everything he told them to do. If he told them, get up and you're going to clean my house, they would have gone up and cleaned his house.
Which house?
Oh, yeah, which house, exactly. And another issue, again, his wife, Ermelinda Lilia Alvarez, most people know her as Lilia Alvarez. On the financial reports, one thing that was funny to me is this is at the time his fiancée, soon to be his wife, and he supposedly has no clue where she lives. On the finance report, she lives in Anytown, USA.
I remember that. Anytown, USA.
Yeah, so this person, Lilia Alvarez, campaigned on transparency when she ran for Board of Supervisors. Randy's constantly preaching about transparency and how things need to be open, yet you have the leader of an organization who's going out of his way to hide everything because now he knows people are watching him.
I want to remind everybody that at the Los Abigados debate, he confronted the three sheriff's candidates with the question, which was more of a mini lecture in my opinion. He said, if you want me to get specific in terms of transparency, how much money have you raised in your campaign today? How much are other activities helping your campaign win? What do the numbers look like? And I think now it is time to ask Randy Parraz those same questions that he asked other
my personal opinion is Randy got he doesn't always give credit where credit is due. A lot of the last recall with Pearce, that was paid petitioners, and that was the unions. The unions got involved in that. So I wondered if he accurately reported all those in-kind contributions of borrowing the offices and using the copy machines and anything else he did administratively. I wonder, did he accurately report down to the penny, because you have to do that, those in-kind contributions?
Well, when myself and Jose Peñalosa, when we met with Randy Parraz and Chad Snow, they asked me how many signatures I had. So why can't the public, the community, ask him how many signatures he had and why did he shred them? Where is the transparency in that? And Carlos Galindo, another Mexican-American activist, very strong and vocal, is asking the same questions we are.
Right.
Well, and that brings up something else, too. Rather than blindly donate to an organization, as a responsible donor, to satisfy your own thoughts about the legitimacy of an organization, you really should be asking yourself things like, what is the nonprofit's purpose? Is the nonprofit's financial picture transparent? What outcomes result from the nonprofit's work? What does your organization aim to accomplish? What strategies will make this happen? What are your capabilities for achieving your goals? How will you know if you are making progress? What have you accomplished so far? What still needs to be done?
My first reaction to that is that the organizations that Randy Parraz are involved with, CBA and Respect Arizona, are more than just mere social service organizations. They're actually political organizations.
Well, before there was a CBA, there was the Arizona Organizing Institute that claimed it was a 501c3, And it went absolutely nowhere. It was actually dissolved by the Corporation Commission because they didn't file their paperwork. And they claimed that they were going to do workshops and all these other things that were supposed to help the community organize. Well, the interesting thing to me is the two people that were listed as officers of this before there was a CBA was Paul Castaneda, who happens to be involved with CWA. He's one of the vice president or president of that particular union, and he's involved with the Maricopa Area Labor Federation, so there's a union tie beginning right there. And also Miss Lilia Alvarez was an officer, so we're seeing her name even before there's a CBA. Either he couldn't get the money because people didn't want to pay to do workshops, or that was just a failed venture from the very beginning because he figured out as a C3 you can't necessarily do all the political activities he wanted to get involved in.
Angel, do you remember when Randy criticized the buying of signatures? And he also went after paid circulators who had protected addresses due to domestic violence. I mean, why are you going after circulators who had protected addresses due to domestic violence?
The issue coming from their camp is that, well, because when we do the notary, we have to disclose to them that they live at that address. And I go, that's not actually 100% accurate. You can staple an addendum to that states that I am a victim of domestic violence, and they can put on there, that's why I'm not disclosing my address, and then get that notarized as well.
You know, I've also heard a criticism from the right wing. Not that we should necessarily listen to the right wing, but we're not going to win over everybody if there's a criticism. I try to live by the philosophy, don't do anything you cannot defend. And the criticism I've heard is that dreamers were collecting signatures on petitions.
There were those of us who saw this occurring, and that is illegal, and some of those signatures did happen. The problem is we weren't smart enough to sit there and videotape it because we didn't want to harm the dreamers.
Well, you know, I guess this is how Randy Parraz gets his ideas, is he calls out others for doing what he thinks is wrong, but after he calls them out and makes that criticism, he engages in the same kind of behaviors.
Well, so we've outlined some serious details about why this whole operation is flawed. But you know, the question here, and what's screaming out in my own mind still again, is where is my recall?
Yeah, where's the recall?
Where's the recall?
Yeah, where?
Didn't we get promised a recall twice? Where's the recall? Instead, what I got is a re-election, and I still have a Sheriff Joe. So what is going on? What are we doing? And are they really promising us to continue? To do it again? It's going to go on? No, please, let's not go on. Let's do something else. Stop this. I want to get off the recall.
The answer has always been comprehensive immigration reform. Sheriff Joe is famous for saying, if you want the law changed, go change the law. All I do is enforce the laws. He's not the factor. The way to take the wind out of Arpaio's sails is to pass comprehensive immigration reform.
But Randy Parraz has said in the past that the issue of immigration is not a litmus test for anybody to join CBA, and I think that's where he's making his tactical error.
And let's remember, he partners with Chad Snow, and Chad Snow alone runs Moving Mesa Forward. I think it was Jeff Biggers wrote an article that all Randy and all of his followers were so happy because it was so accurate. And in that article, they named Chad Snow as a Rush Limbaugh newsletter subscribing Republican. So is there any reason you can think of that Randy couldn't mention immigration?
Well, again, all of these things indicate how flawed this system was from the beginning. I'd like to say for the record, you know, I know a lot of elected officials, and I don't remember one that actually admitted that they think that this was a great idea from the beginning.
Where's the Democratic Party been?
I can think of a few right now who repeatedly just tried to indicate hope, of course, and bless them for doing so, but then no one ever bought in. Elected officials, you know, they say things like, well, it's a tall order, or it's they're gonna it's an uphill battle, or they got their work cut out for them. But the truth is, they knew it wasn't possible. They're there in the legislature, they're there in the Senate, they know the sentiment of the people, they see the voter rolls, they know how it's heavy on Sheriff Joe's side. They knew that. Yet people didn't want to impugn the hope of recalling Sheriff Joe. So now let me be the first to say that, you know, let's take a look at ourselves. Okay, we tried it. I didn't say anything negative about it during the recall at all. I let it play out to the end because I too have hope. I do love those words together, recall Arpaio. I love the sound of that, right? But it didn't work twice now, okay? Second time, shame on me. So I'm saying to my community, my message to the community is we got to look at ourselves now, right? Why do we feel like we need to buy this snake oil? And what is wrong with us? We need to think of a better strategy and stop looking to people who are leading us down a path to nowhere and pull out some more community members, some leaders from within our own ranks that'll take us to a place we want to go.
I think the community and for the people who gave and donated money time and time again ought to know how many signatures there were. What percentage of the signatures did they collect that were valid? How close were they to obtaining the signatures? For all we know, all they collected was 150,000, and a few people may have signed their names as Mickey Mouse. We will never know. And that is disingenuous. That is a waste of time to the volunteers. More importantly, he continued to ask for donations to the very last day. If he knew he was not going to succeed, why put these poor kids out running around, as Carlos Galindo calls it? They were running around with their heads cut off like a chicken and out in over 100-degree weather.
Yeah.
There is something really sick and wrong about that.
I'd like to know how much money has been received collectively by CBA and Respect Arizona since the inception of the recall.
Does Randy need Joe Arpaio to keep the money flowing? In essence, is Joe Arpaio necessary in order for Randy to continue to ask for money?
You could make the argument.
They need each other.
Recall
need each
campaigns
other.
are supposed to be temporary, very short, right? You recall, you get it done, and he's out of there, like Russell Pearce, right? If you can get a home loan based on your income from a recall campaign, that means the damn recall's taking too long. That's what that means. That means it's taking too long, and it's not happening. It's not working.
No, Randy Parraz and Joe Arpaio, they're the opposite sides of the same coin, okay? Yeah, Randy Parraz needs Joe Arpaio. Speaking of Joe Arpaio, I'd like to know how much money Joe Arpaio was able to generate out of this recall. And I wonder what's going to happen with all that money that Arpaio now has as a result of this recall. What's going to happen to all this money?
Well, I've been kind of paying attention to the Republican vibe out there here in Arizona, and I've been sort of perusing the Tea Party websites. And right now, Randy Parraz is a laughing stock. Nobody's going to take him serious, particularly the independent voters who make up a third of the Arizona structure, the voting structure. And so he's a laughing stock, and nobody's going to take him seriously anymore, particularly the independents and the Republicans. He's being labeled as a liberal communist, and how's he going to run for office now? He just shot himself in the foot.
I would just say, Mr. Parraz, if you're listening, you need not only the Democrats, but you also need some Republicans and independents. And folks, since they said, Lydia Alvarez says this is not done yet, this is not over, I would say that we are not over yet. We will be returning to this subject next week on the next edition of Phoenix Talkback. I want to thank everybody for joining me today in the studio.
Órale, pues.